right, guys, so I stumbled across this very, very, very interesting segment that I want to talk about because I got a whole lot of thoughts on this topic, right? In which Miss Joy Reid, aka Miss Joyless Reid, aka Miss Tiffany Cross, right, of MSNBC, had a panel discussion about Republican women, particularly white women, Republican white women, conservative white women. And basically she argued that they are upholding the patriarchy and that they have white privilege. And this is what is affecting their voting patterns because for whatever reason, she can't figure out, Tiffany Cross and her panelists, they can't figure out why in the world do white women vote against their best interests when they vote for the GOP. And again, I have a whole lot of comments on this because I think that segments like this are one of the reasons why Democrats will continue to lose. And there's also segments like this is why people are so ignorant in this country about who actually fought for the rights of so-called minorities in this country historically when it comes to political parties. And this gives me an excellent opportunity to talk about this. So let's go ahead and roll this clip.
And, look, we do have to call out our sisters in this struggle who don't always vote in alignment with the folks you see on the screen here. That is very frustrating. Carmen, we saw a lot of this. I mean, when we think about this is when Congress passed the 19th Amendment. But when we go back and look at what was happening around that time, there were people like Elizabeth Stanton and other women who were really focused on white women and thought white women were the priority. Never mind what black men are going through. Never mind what people of color were going through, and actually said that out loud. It was, of course, Sojourner Truth who gave the famous speech, Ain't I a Woman, at the convention where they're discussing the 19th. I want to ask you, Carmen, I feel like there's still a divide today in the conversations that we have about women's rights, with some of white women continuously voting overwhelmingly Republican. Lucy Caldwell's a show regular, and she gave one of the best and most honest answers, I thought, on why that happens. I want you to take a listen, Carmen, and then I'll ask you about it on the other side.
Okay. A real problem is that Republican women are in this mode, and specifically white women, where in a way they do benefit from the patriarchy, right? And so they are feeling or participating in the same kind of story of economic insecurity or, a right or a privilege that they believe their white husbands and sons and fathers deserve is going to a person of color, right? So they have a stake in the old paradigm that is harmful. They also, at the same time, it's good to be a white woman because white women also benefit from the progress that Democrats have worked to assure for white women.
Carmen, I loved the honesty in that answer because when she said it's good to be a white woman, we are not impacted in the same way as other people. You dealt with a little bit of this in the Women's March. Talk to me about where we are today. Are we more unified today than we were 103 years ago, or do those same divides, do they still exist?
Well, I think we have to understand that patriarchy isn't upheld only by men. Not one of the 8 women who are Republican members of Congress voted for the Women's Health Protection Act.
Guys, I love how Tiffany Cross, who has called black conservatives a minstrel show on her show on MSNBC. She's basically has criticized black conservatives for going on conservative TV shows like Fox News or whatever and saying what she deems to be anti-black comments, right? Making comments against black people. However, she brings on a liberal white woman to bash white women, and she celebrates that, right? That's not a minstrel show according to her, right? When it is clear what the intent is, and she admits it in her segment that, hey, I brought this woman on to talk junk about white women. And I love the fact that her as a white woman is saying all the things I think about white women. Again, I just find that to be fascinating, right? And hilarious at the same time. My advice to this liberal white woman is don't do this to yourself, right? Don't do this to yourself, okay? Don't do that to yourself because they will never, ever, ever accept you, right? And ain't that the same thing that they tell black conservatives? But with that being said, I think what really bothers me about these segments, right, from MSNBC and the woke mainstream liberal media and Democrat parties, that they try to twist history. They try to make it seem like Democrats are historically the party that fought for all these rights, okay, whether it comes to so-called racial minorities or women, okay, when just That's just not true, right? It's just factually incorrect. Again, I told you guys about the Civil Rights Act, right? Democrats try to take credit for that, and that's kind of one of the reasons why black people started voting Democrat, is because there's this false perception that Democrats are responsible for civil rights for so-called racial minorities, and that's just not true. Actually, the Republican Party, right, as a party from a percentage standpoint, overwhelmingly supported the Civil Rights Act, both of them. The Civil Rights Act of 1957, which was signed into law by Dwight D. Eisenhower, a Republican president, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democratic president. Both of those Civil Rights Act, major pieces of legislation, Republicans, as a percentage of their party, supported it overwhelmingly more than Democrats. Okay, Democrats tried to filibuster. They tried to block the Civil Rights Acts. Okay, but see, again, if you listen to Democrats, there's the history of our party. We fought for all of this. We fought for your rights. We're the reason why you have it. And those Republicans was in the way. Again, that's a lie. Right? It's also a lie when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to the 19th Amendment, which they're sitting here in this segment pretending like, again, it was a Democrat party. It was us. We were the ones that were responsible for that. No, that's not true either as well. Listen to this, guys. In May of 1919, a Republican from Illinois, James Mann, actually introduced the 19th Amendment in the House of Representatives. Now, it passed by a vote of 304 to 89. 200 Republicans voted in favor of the 19th Amendment, while only 102 Democrats voted in favor of it. Okay. Also, the 19th Amendment, when it went to the Senate, okay, Democrats tried to filibuster the 19th Amendment in the Senate as well. It ended up passing by a vote of 56 to 25. 82% of Republicans voted in favor of that amendment, while only 41% of Democrats voted in favor of it. Okay? When it comes to the ratification of the 19th Amendment, as of March 1920, 36 states had ratified the 19th Amendment. 26 of those states were Republican states. Okay? So again, we have a situation here in which not only did we have the Civil Rights Act, which was overwhelmingly supported by the Republican Party from a percentage standpoint, we also have the 19th Amendment, which is women's rights to vote. But again, if you listen to these people talk, you would think the exact opposite when it's just factually incorrect, right? What they're saying is just not true. It's not grounded in any history, right? And again, that's what really frustrates me about mainstream media. They're actually not trying to educate people on history, right? They're not trying to educate people on history. But then at the same time, you know, it's not like the Republican Party really does a great job of actually telling people that, no. We're the party that actually voted overwhelmingly in support of, you know, the 19th Amendment or, you know, the Civil Rights Act. Okay. But with that being said, it is segments like this that keep Democrats from actually getting the votes of the people that they say they want to get their votes from. Right? Because they always do these segments in which they think that people are supposed to vote with their identity. Right? They say, well, you know, if you're a woman, you're supposed to vote Democrat because voting Democrat is in your best interest. And if you don't vote Democrat, then you're not actually a real woman. You're not in favor of women's rights. Again, it's the same thing they say about black folks. Okay? If you're black and you don't vote Democrat, then you're not actually really black. And in my opinion, that is insulting. It is sexist for Joyless Reed here to sit here and say that as a woman, you have to vote Democrat. And if you don't vote Democrat, then you are upholding the patriarchy, right? She's basically trying to tell women how they're supposed to think, okay, and what is in a woman's best interest, right? She's mansplaining to women, particularly white women, right? White women that don't vote Democrat, okay? Again, they think that this racialized arguments in regards to who you're supposed to vote for, this identity politics, they think, well, that's going to get people to vote for us, right? Talking down to them, tell them that you ain't really, you know, your gender or you ain't really your race if you don't vote the way I want you to vote. When the reality of the situation is that when these people go to the polls, right, when they go to vote, nobody's walking in the booth and saying, okay, let me vote for whoever is best for me as a white woman, right? That's not what they're thinking when they go to the polls to vote. That's not what they're thinking. They're going to the poll and saying, okay, who's going to be best for the economy? Who's going to be best for my kids? Who's going to be best for this country, right? They're not going up there and saying, I have to vote with somebody based off my race. That's not what they're thinking about, okay? You know why the GOP flipped Virginia in their last governor election? Well, the reason why is because the Democrat Party is pushing extreme racial, gender, and sexual ideology on kids in school. So a lot of these suburban moms, again, that is who she's actually really talking about here, suburban moms that tend to be more moderate, that can swing back and forth between Democrat and Republican. A lot of them overwhelmingly voted for Republicans. They was like, no, you're coming after my kids, right? You're trying to teach my kids things in school that I don't agree with, okay? They're not out here voting and saying, oh, no, well, I'm voting Republican because they're best for white women, right? Or because they're best for the white man. That's not why they're voting. That's not what's on their mind when they go to vote. What's on their mind when they go to vote is, okay, well, what are these people trying to do to my kids, right? What about the economy? What about gas prices? What about inflation? But see, Democrats don't want to focus on that because, well, they aren't really doing a good job on those things. So they got to play racialized politics. And even if a woman goes to the polls and says, hey, you know what? Let me vote in favor of holding up the so-called patriarchy. I would say, okay, well, that is her right, right? If she wants to do that, if she feels like that is in the best interest of her and her family, what is wrong with that? And I would make an argument that maybe voting to uphold the patriarchy, aka keep men in their traditional roles, okay, as men, right? I would argue that that probably is in their best interest, okay? If you're a stay-at-home mom, why would you want your husband to get replaced by some woke diversity and inclusion hire, right? Why would you want that? Okay, why would you want men to not have a prominent role as the preacher, provider, and protector in this society? Of course, that's what you would want, right? You want to maintain traditional gender roles and the traditional structure of society, right? That is how traditional and conservative women think. So, of course, if they vote that way, they're voting in their own best interest, right? They're voting in their own best interest. And that's been one of my criticisms of, how black folks vote. Because black women overwhelmingly support the Democrat Party. They're the wokest among us, right? They're the wokest among us. And for whatever reason, black men follow right along. Even though clearly black men have waken up to the nonsense, right? The games from Democrat Party. And a lot of black men are breaking away and actually, voting Republican or not voting Democrat at all. It's still not happening at a significant enough clip to make a real impact because they follow behind black women, right? They let black women lead, right? You're letting black women lead. And it's like, no, you can't let black women lead us in terms of our politics. Because, again, they're overwhelmingly in favor of the Democrat Party. Overwhelmingly in favor of the Democrat Party. They will never stop voting Democrat, okay? But, again, with that being said, it's not just white women that are Republicans. You also have conservative and traditional women that are so-called minorities. You have black women that are traditional. You have Asian women that are traditional. You have Hispanic women that are traditional. It ain't just white women, right? Again, I find it fascinating how they never address the conservative women / traditional women that vote Republican that aren't white. They just assume all women that vote Republican are white, and that's just not true as well, okay? That's not true as well. So with that being said, segments like this is again why the Democrat Party they can't get ahead, because they're more focused on identity politics. They're more focused on telling people that they're not real women or they're not real minorities or real victim category they want to throw out there because they don't vote Democrat, right? Instead of focusing on the real issues that people actually go to the polls and vote over. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.